December 1st, 1948. The world was still healing from a war that had ended just 3 years before. In Australia, people were building new lives. Hope was in the air. But on Somerton Park Beach, just south of Adelaide, hope had washed up with the tide. Just after 6:30 a.m., 2 men out for a morning walk noticed something unusual. A man, well dressed in a tie and jacket, was lying against the seawall. They assumed he was drunk, or maybe homeless, sleeping off a cold night. But as they got closer, they noticed his feet were crossed perfectly, too perfectly, and his hand was placed gently beside him, almost ceremonially. They tried to wake him. He didn't move. They called police. When authorities arrived, they made the first of many discoveries that would turn this case into a 70-year obsession. The man wasn't asleep. He was dead. But here's what didn't make sense. There were no signs of a struggle. No wounds, no blood, no vomit. Nothing to suggest violence. It was as if he had simply stopped living. In his pockets, police found a comb, a pack of chewing gum, a bus ticket from the city, but with the destination torn off. A train ticket to a suburb called Henley Beach, but he never used it. An unused second-class rail ticket, and a one-way ticket from Sydney to Adelaide, purchased under a fake name. Everything in his possession was ordinary, anonymous, deliberately useless. There was no wallet, no identification, no passport, no money, no keys, except for one thing. Inside the seam of his trousers, sewn into the fabric so carefully it was almost invisible, police found a tiny, folded piece of paper. On it were 2 words, Tamám Shud, translated from Persian, "It is ended." The man on the beach had left behind a message, a farewell. But who was he saying goodbye to? And why would a man with no name, no identity, no past, leave a note that seemed to close a book that had never even been opened? I'm your host, and this is Dark Evidence. Today, we begin the investigation into one of history's most baffling cold cases. A mystery so deep, so layered, so impossibly strange, that it has defeated detectives, historians, and codebreakers for over 7 decades. The Somerton Man, the body on the beach, the code that refuses to be broken. This is part 1, the discovery. To understand why this case has haunted generations, we have to understand the world he left behind. Adelaide, 1948, was a quiet city, respectable, boring even. Crime was rare. Murder was almost unheard of. So when a well-dressed man turned up dead on a public beach with no identification and no cause of death, the newspapers went wild. They called him the Somerton Man, a placeholder name for a ghost. Police released descriptions. He was around 45 years old, 5'11", blue eyes, fair hair, graying at the temples, well-fed, well cared for, strong hands, not a laborer, maybe a professional, maybe military. His teeth were perfect, unusual for the time. That suggested money, or access to good dental care, the kind provided by armies. They took his fingerprints, sent them to every police department in Australia, to Scotland Yard, to the FBI. Nothing, no match. It was as if this man had never existed before the moment he sat down against that seawall and died. But here's where the story takes its first turn into darkness. Because the man wasn't just unidentified, he was unidentifiable. The tags had been cut from his clothes, deliberately, carefully. His suit was expensive American-made, but the manufacturer's labels had been removed. His shoes were high quality, the serial numbers scratched off. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase this man's identity. Why? What was he hiding from? And, more importantly, who was he hiding from us? The answer, when it came, would arrive in the most unexpected way possible. From a book, a rare ancient book, found in the back seat of a parked car, abandoned just blocks from the beach. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a collection of Persian poetry from the 11th century. Verses about life, death, fate, and the fleeting nature of existence. It was a strange thing to find near a dead man. But here's what made it stranger. When police opened the book, they found something written on the last page. Not in print, in pencil, a code. 5 lines of capital letters that made no sense to anyone who saw them. At first, police dismissed it. Maybe it was a shopping list, maybe a game, maybe nonsense. But they kept the book anyway, and for months, the case went cold. The man was buried in a local cemetery. No headstone, just a number. The unknown man. It seemed like the story was over. But then, months later, police received a visit from a woman. She was terrified, shaking. She refused to give her full name, but she told them something that would crack the case wide open, or so they thought. The woman said she had seen the dead man's photograph in the newspaper, and she recognized him. His name, she said, wasn't Somerton Man. It was, who was she? What name did she give? And why, after she walked out of that police station, did she vanish completely, never to be heard from again? That's next time, on Dark Evidence. If you want to help us solve this mystery, leave your theories in the comments below. Do you recognize the code? Have you heard this story before? Tell us what you think, and subscribe to Dark Evidence, because this case is only getting stranger. I'm your host, and remember, some evidence never stays buried. Last time on Dark Evidence, a man is found dead on Somerton Beach, 1948. No ID, no wounds, no cause of death. Inside his trousers, a hidden note, Tamám Shud, it is ended. A book of Persian poetry turns up with an unbreakable code inside. And then a woman walks into a police station, claiming she knows his real name. Today, we find out who she was, and why her revelation only made things worse. July 1949. 7 months after the body was found, the woman who came forward was in her 20s. Dark hair, nervous eyes. She gave her name only as Justin, but that wasn't her real name. It was a pseudonym one she used years earlier, during the war. Her real name was Joanne Thompson, though soon she would be known as Joanne Parks, after she married. Joanne told police a story that seemed impossible. She said she recognized the dead man's plaster cast the bust made by police to preserve his features. She had seen him before, in Sydney, years earlier. She had been working as a nurse during the war. One day, she was at a train station in Sydney when a man approached her. He was handsome, well-dressed, intense. He asked her to go for a walk. She said no, but he persisted. And over the following weeks, they met several times. He told her he was a traveling salesman. He never gave his full name, just a first name. But Joanne remembered something else. Something she hadn't told anyone in 7 months. She said the man had given her something. A box. A small wooden box. Inside that box was a book. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. But not just any copy. Joanne said the man had given her a copy of that very book years before the body was found. And inside her copy was a phone number, written in pencil. A number that, when dialed, connected to a woman in Sydney who spoke in code. Joanne claimed she didn't know what any of it meant. She said the man was just a stranger who had briefly entered her life and then vanished. But police noticed something. When they showed her the body's plaster cast, she didn't react with simple recognition. She reacted with horror. She covered her mouth. She turned away. She wouldn't look at it again. Police asked her directly, Was this the man from the train station? Joanne said yes. Then she said no. Then she said she wasn't sure. Then she asked to leave. She was never formally interviewed again. She refused to return to the station. And when detectives tried to follow up, her husband, a man named George Parks, threatened legal action if they contacted her again. But here's the detail that breaks this case open. Joanne's husband, George, was a pharmacist. And in 1948, one of the leading theories about the Somerton man's death was poison. A poison so rare, so difficult to detect, that no autopsy could find it. A poison that caused paralysis, then coma, then death, leaving the victim looking peaceful, relaxed, exactly like the man on the beach. The poison theory has never been proven, but it's never been disproven either. And Joanne Parks, the woman who knew his face, took that secret to her grave. She died in 2007, never revealing the full truth. But before she died, she gave one final interview to a journalist in private. And in that interview, she said something that changed everything. His name was... What name did Joanne whisper before she died? And if she knew him, why did she spend 60 years pretending she didn't? That's next time on Dark Evidence. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next part. Drop your theories in the comments. Do you think Joanne was involved? Was it poison or something else entirely? I'm your host, and remember, some secrets are worth killing for. The woman who knew the Somerton man's face came forward, then vanished. Her husband was a pharmacist with access to untraceable poisons, and before she died, she whispered a name. But today, we look at the evidence she left behind, the code. 5 lines of letters that have defeated the world's best minds for 75 years. Over the decades, the Somerton Man code has been analyzed by the FBI, the CIA, as Australia's intelligence agency, retired codebreakers from World War II, mathematics professors, linguists, cryptographers, amateur sleuths on internet forums, and nobody has broken it. Let's look at what we know. First, the letters are all capitals. No punctuation, no spaces except line breaks. Second, the lines get shorter. 5 lines, 44 letters total. Third, it was written in pencil, inside a rare book of Persian poetry, found in a car, abandoned near a dead body. This is not random scribbling. This is a message. But what does it say? The first theory, it's a code using a specific book as a key. During World War II, spies often used codes that required a specific book. Both the sender and receiver had the same edition. You'd send numbers that corresponded to page, line, and word. Without the book, the code was unbreakable. So if the Rubaiyat was the key book, what happens if we try to decode it? In the 1970s, a University of Adelaide professor tried exactly that. He matched the letters to words in the Rubaiyat. The first line Hugobabd could correspond to a specific verse. And what did he find? Nothing coherent, just more nonsense. Then, in 1978, a new theory emerged. What if the code wasn't English at all? What if it was a foreign language, transcribed into English letters? Remember, the book is Persian poetry. Tamám Shud is Persian. The Somerton man had physically strong hands, good teeth, maybe military, maybe intelligence. What if he was a spy? What if the code is Farsi? Linguists have tried, Farsi speakers have tried. The code doesn't translate. It's not Farsi. But in 2021, something happened that nobody expected. A team of codebreakers working remotely during the pandemic announced they had cracked it. Finally, after 73 years, they claimed the code was a shorthand system used by merchant sailors in the early 20th century, a way to encode personal messages. They said the first line Go Bab translated to WR could mean warrant, Go could mean go, AB could mean able-bodied seaman, D could mean dismissed. Put together, warrant, go able-bodied seaman, dismissed. That doesn't make sense, but if you treat it as initials for a longer phrase, the team proposed warrant to go. Able-bodied seaman, dismissed. Still nonsense. The cryptography community was not impressed. The consensus, this was not a solution. The code remained unbroken. And then, in 2022, something even stranger happened. A man in Adelaide was cleaning out his dead father's attic. He found an old box. Inside that box was a book, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a different edition but the same era. And tucked inside the pages was a piece of paper with a phone number written on it and a name. The name on that paper, it matched one of the names investigators had suspected for decades. The name Joanne Parks whispered before she died. Who was that name? And if the code was connected to that person, why did the government immediately classify the discovery and forbid the family from speaking about it? The code is still unsolved. The name is still secret. But in part 4, we get closer than anyone ever has. We travel to the morgue. We exhume the body. And we finally put a face to the name. Subscribe now. Comment your theories. What does Rubaiyat mean to you? I'm your host, and remember, some codes are meant to stay buried. Last time, the code remains unbroken. A discovery in an attic links the case to a classified name, and the government steps in to silence the witness. But today, we do what no one has done in 70 years. We dig up the body. May 2021, Adelaide, Australia. For the first time since 1949, the grave of the Somerton Man is opened. The goal: extract DNA, identify him. Finally, give him a name. The body inside is remarkably preserved. The sandy soil, the lead-lined coffin it created a time capsule. His teeth are intact. Perfect, just as the 1948 report described. His bones are strong. And in those bones is the answer. The DNA is sent to a laboratory in Adelaide, then to a specialist in Texas, then to a genealogy database. The same kind of database used to catch the Golden State Killer. And slowly, painstakingly, a family tree begins to form. The geneticists found matches, distant cousins, living people who shared DNA with the dead man. They traced the lineage back to the 1800s, and then forward again, to a name, a specific name. In October 2022, the lead researcher called a press conference. He stood at a podium, cameras flashing. He said, "We have identified the Somerton Man," and then nothing. He never said the name. The press conference ended abruptly. The researchers' university issued a statement. "We are not releasing the name at this time." And then the researcher disappeared. Not literally, but he stopped talking to the press, stopped returning calls. The name was suppressed. Why? What was so dangerous about this name? Was the Somerton Man a spy, a criminal, a member of a powerful family? Or was he someone whose identity, if revealed, would cause a scandal that governments had spent 70 years covering up? But here's what the geneticists did reveal, in fragments, before they went silent. The Somerton Man's ancestry was not Australian, it was Eastern European, with a specific genetic marker found almost exclusively in one small region. A region that, in 1948, was behind the Iron Curtain. The Somerton Man may have been from a communist bloc country. If he was a spy, which side was he on? And if he was killed, who killed him? The poison theory suddenly makes more sense. Certain poisons used by Soviet intelligence in the 1940s left no trace, caused paralysis, mimicked natural death, exactly like the Somerton Man. Was the Somerton Man a Soviet agent killed by his own side, or an American agent killed by the Soviets? Oh, we've traveled together through 75 years of mystery. We've followed the body, the code, the woman, the poison, the DNA, and the daughter. And now, we've arrived at the place where all cold cases must eventually end, the verdict. This isn't a court verdict. There will never be a trial for the Somerton Man. This is a verdict of history. What really happened to him? Let's assemble the evidence one last time. Evidence number 1. The body. A healthy, well-fed man in his 40s. No signs of struggle, no wounds, no obvious cause of death. Perfect teeth, suggesting either a military background or significant wealth. All tags were cut from his clothes, every piece of identification stripped away. Evidence number 2, the poison. The leading forensic theory today is that he was killed by a rare, fast-acting poison, possibly digitalis, or a related cardiac glycoside. These poisons occur naturally in plants like foxglove. They cause paralysis, then cardiac arrest, and they leave almost no trace in an autopsy, especially with the technology of 1948. Evidence number 3, the book and code. A copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, found in a car near the beach. Tucked inside was a tiny, torn piece of paper with the words Tamám Shud, meaning it is ended, and inside the book's back cover, a 5-line code that remains unbreakable to this day. The book is too specific to be a coincidence. It links the dead man to espionage, to Persia, to something hidden. Evidence number 4, Joanne Parks, the woman who recognized him. She had met him years before. She had even received a copy of that same book from him. She was married to a pharmacist with easy access to poisons. She refused to cooperate fully with the police and took the truth to her grave in 2007, but not before whispering a name to her daughter. Evidence number 5, the daughter. Identified by DNA analysis in 2022. She's still alive, living in Australia, but has refused to speak publicly. Her existence proves the Somerton Man had a connection to Australia that went deeper than a single visit. He wasn't just passing through, he had family here. And evidence number 6, the suppressed name. The geneticists who analyzed the DNA found his name. They announced they had found it, and then complete silence. They refused to release it. Someone, a government, a family, a powerful institution shut it down. The question is, why? Now, let's build the theories based on this evidence. Theory A, the Soviet spy. The Somerton Man was a Soviet intelligence officer operating in Australia. His mission was to gather intel on Western military operations as the Cold War was just heating up. Spies were everywhere. He met Joanne in Sydney. They had a relationship, and a child was born, the daughter identified by DNA. But something went terribly wrong. He was compromised, and his own side decided he was a liability. They poisoned him with an untraceable agent and left his body on a public beach as a chilling warning. The code was a dead drop message that was never picked up. Theory B, the American agent. The flip side of the coin. The Somerton Man was an American intelligence officer working against the Soviets. He was tracking their spy networks in Australia when he was discovered. The Soviets poisoned him in retaliation, leaving his body in a public place to send a message. We can get you anywhere, anytime. The code was his final, encrypted transmission, waiting for an extraction that never came. His own government couldn't publicly identify him without revealing their sensitive operations. so they let him remain unknown for 75 years. Theory C. The Jilted Lover. This one is simpler, darker, and more human. The Somerton Man was an ordinary person, maybe a sailor or a traveling salesman. He met Joanne, they had an affair, and she became pregnant. But she was already married, or about to be, to George Parks, the pharmacist. George found out. George had access to poison. George confronted him one night on Somerton Beach. Or perhaps the man, in his despair, took something himself. Joanne recognized the body, came forward, but then retreated, terrified of what her husband might have done, and protected him for 60 years. And the code? Maybe it was nothing. A private puzzle, a romantic game, a distraction that worked better than anyone could have imagined. Theory D, the one that got away. This theory emerged just recently. In 2023, a historian suggested the Somerton Man wasn't a spy at all, but a deserter from World War II. A man who changed his identity, built a new life in Australia, fell in love, and had a child. But his past caught up to him. He was tracked down by military police or intelligence agents and quietly executed to avoid embarrassing the government. The suppressed name, a military cover-up that continues to this day. Which theory is correct? We may never know for certain. But in 2024, something happened that gave us one final, tantalizing clue. A man came forward. He said that his grandmother, on her deathbed in 2019, told him a story. She claimed she had known the Somerton Man when she was a young woman. She said his name was H.C. Reynolds. She said he was a spy. And she said he wasn't killed by anyone. He killed himself. She claimed he had a rare, painful medical condition and was dying. He came to Adelaide to see her one last time, the woman he loved. But she was married and couldn't see him. So, heartbroken, he sat on the beach, took the poison he had brought for this exact purpose, and waited for the end. He removed his identification so she wouldn't be connected to his death, so her reputation wouldn't be ruined. Tamám Shud, it is ended. We don't know if this story is true, but we do know this. For 75 years, a man lay in an unmarked grave, unknown and unclaimed. In 2022, that grave was finally marked, not with a name, but with the words "known unto God," a phrase used for unidentified soldiers. Maybe that's fitting. The Somerton Man was a mystery, a cipher, a ghost, and maybe, just maybe, that's how he wanted it. The code is still unsolved. The name is still secret. The daughter is still silent. But the story is out there. And now, you are part of it. What do you think happened? Was he a spy? A victim? A heartbroken man who just wanted to disappear? Drop your theories in the comments below. Share this video, and let's keep the investigation alive. If you have any information, please contact Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, thank you for watching. And remember, some evidence never stays buried.